Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Football Behavior Management stream. Our topic today is profiling famous footballers. And today we are going to look into what most people would call personality, but what in reality is evolutionary behavioral patterns of Luis Suarez. Luis Suarez is a very famous footballer, but in case you don't know, he played for Groningen in the Netherlands, then Ajax, then Barcelona, currently at Atletico. So he is a very interesting player. We're going to look into detail to see how we can profile him. We're using the neurogram system. That's a system that I personally developed. It's based on Cybernetic Big Five Theory, which is the most scientific neuroscience way of looking at evolutionary behavioral patterns. And we have done a whole series. We started with a general introduction, can be found on the website. I'll put in a link so that you can check for yourself if you haven't seen it yet. And then we went on to Pep Guardiola as a type 1 perfectionist brain. So to explain evolutionary behavioral patterns, they follow on the kind of brain cells that you have inside your head. There are about 1,000 different brain cells. And well, if you have more of one type than another, then you behave a bit different, or quite a bit different even. And so that's the reason why we call them brain types. In the same way that my body is a different type, most likely, than your body. There's also a high chance that your brain has a different type than my brain. And we can actually see that in functional MRI scanners. Or we can do a neurogram test. We actually test to see, we can type someone and discover what kind of brain he has. Or we can profile a player based on public data. Of course, that only works for very famous players where we have lots of public stories about them. Nevertheless, for football clubs like FC Twente, Kortrijk, Leicester, I am busy working with them, and hopefully they will use the neurogram more and more. And also for player agents that we actually type their players so that they are much better capable of, supporting their own players. Also, it creates a lot of loyalty. That's another article that is very interesting, if you haven't read it yet, about how to create loyalty in your players. Very important for clubs as well as agents. And you can use the knowledge of brain types to actually make sure that you understand what they are looking for and how you can provide it for them. So all in all, it is very important, personality, or evolutionary personality, I should say, and evolutionary behavioral patterns. So this is actually already episode 9 out of 10. Tomorrow we'll do the most famous football player ever, Messi. But today we're at with Luis Suarez, and we had 7 before him. Pep, as I already mentioned, Pep Guardiola as a type 1 perfectionist, Ronaldo, the superstar football player, as a type 2 helper, Ruud Gullit, Dutch player from some time ago, as a type 3 successful worker, and 4 is Romario, also an older player who's now in the Brazilian Senate, actually became a politician. And that is very much understandable if you understand his brain type. For type 5, we have Marco van Basten, another famous Dutch player from the same generation as Ruud van Gullit. Ruud Gullit, not Ruud van Gullit. Marco van Basten and Ruud Gullit. And type 6 was Cascarino. He is not that famous, but it's very hard to find type 6 players in football in general and in superstars specifically. And last time we looked at the profile of Maradona, who was the obvious for type 7 hedonist, the Epicurean who really likes to enjoy himself. But today we do Luis Suarez, and he has a type 8 brain. We'll go into details what that means. If you have any question, it's good to see so many of you watching this. Very supportive when you come and tune in. But if you have any questions, any remarks, please let me know, and then I will answer them as good as I can. But let's start. So let's start with Luis Suarez, brain type 8, the boss. I think he's looking quite bossy here. But the type 8 bosses cannot be recognized that well from the way they look. But fortunately, we can see it in their behavior. And so the type 8 boss is on the top left corner, where we see disinhibition. And that means that he is in exploration. It still says scanning, but we understood actually during the series I got a deeper understanding. So it is scanning, but scanning is only the external behavior. What is internally happening is that we see that he is actually using that he has game intelligence, which is often described as vision. So again, here we have a player, unlike Romario, who is an opportunist. Here we have a player with actually vision and actually can predict how the match will go. And we'll see that he is not only very selfish as an attacker, but actually quite social, which is also very much understandable because he is so high in the whole system. So he's very close to stability, and stability is social stability, which means that he is actually quite capable of playing with other players. And that is quite atypical for strikers, because most of the strikers are either relocated near autonomy or move toward autonomy. That is also the case with Suarez. So he actually has a line going from 8 to 5 if you look closely, and that is actually his stress line. So for him to be a great attacker, he needs a lot of stress. The stress moves him towards autonomy, and then he becomes a much more creative player. Whereas if he relaxes, he moves to exploitation. He becomes more of an opportunist, and he goes into passing. So his relaxed play is also quite obvious from descriptions of his play style. We'll see later today, or later this evening. But he is one of the greatest goal scorers of the current generation. But for actually scoring goals, being the creative and attack very well, there he needs a lot of stress. So that was unlike some of the other strikers that we've seen that were much better at, for instance, Ruud Gullit, who could pretty much be very relaxed when playing the role of a striker. But in the case of Suarez, the autonomy, the on your own part, is quite stressful. And that's also what, of course, we've seen in his behaviors, because he has been quite extreme in his behavior. So let's go into some detail and see what we can find on the playstyle of Suarez. I'm not sure whether this is the good place to start. This is the one I was looking for. And so this is about Suarez, his playstyle. He also creates many scoring opportunities for his teammates with his vision and great passing abilities, as is reflected in the numbers of assists, among the very highest within the stats recorded history. And so this is the point that I was making, that actually Suarez, besides being a great scorer himself, he actually has the vision, which means, what is translated into game intelligence, and that often involves scanning the environment, and especially, of course, the players and the opposing players. And he has, and his great passing abilities. That is also where he relaxes. When he relaxes, he becomes a better passer. And so this is very interesting. As a type 8 boss brain, he is very close to social stability, as we have seen here. I normally associate social stability with defending. Of course, that's not the case for Suarez. but he is very social as a player, as an attack, especially as an attacker. So you can see that most attackers are quite egoistically, but of course we would not call it egoistically, we call it autonomy. But Suarez is quite different. He actually is very social and very willing to let other players score. And that is, of course, has pretty much to do with his brain type. His brain type is quite social, even though the name, the type 8, the boss, is suggesting that he is he tries to rule over the others. That is not the case. The names are a bit misleading. In this case, it is more a player who has difficulties with authority figures. So we have a question from Vega Simic. Good to see that you joined us, Vega Simic. I did not see you before, but you're more than welcome, of course. Would you discourage strikers with a type 8 brain to be relaxed when playing and encourage to be stressed to be productive? That depends on the role. Of course, for the team, it really doesn't matter whether you score yourself or whether you are giving an assist. So but if you would, if you want, so if the team needs a goal, for instance, they're 1-0 behind, and the team needs a goal, for instance, to go to overtime, then it's a good thing to actually, and you think Suarez is the player that is the biggest chance in the team to score, then you can put a lot of pressure on Suarez. Say, you have to score, you have to score. I can't believe you do it. Go on, do it, or I kick your ass. And then it actually increases the chances of Suarez being able to score. But if you have other players that are quite capable of scoring, and then it might be better to relax Suarez, because then you can anticipate on him being able to see the opportunities, become more opportunist, and use his social brain as a way to actually increase the chance of other players scoring. So it is dependent on context. For most brain types, it's quite clear. Depending on your brain type, it's either best to be stressed or relaxed or in a neutral state. But in the case of Suarez or type 8 players, it really depends on context. It really depends on what kind of other players you have running around. And so to be clear, the brain has three modes. It can either be stressing, it can be relaxing, or it can be neither stressing nor relaxing. And that is a very important dynamic that you have to take into account. The other player that I was thinking about was Ibrahimovic. He also has most likely a type 8 brain. And Ibrahimovic did not function well within Barcelona. So he also came to Barcelona, but Messi did not like him. And that's at least the story. So I think that in the case of Ibrahimovic and Messi, they actually did not match that well. For instance, that Messi was much more into social stability, and Ibrahimovic was probably quite stressed at Barcelona, which makes him a great striker given his type 8 brain, but would be way less social than Messi would have wanted. Whereas Suarez, with the same brain type, actually worked quite was of course one of the star players of Barcelona. So that worked really well in the same role. And I think it has to do with that Luis Suarez was much more relaxed coming to Barcelona. All right, if you yourself would be a type 8, would you make yourself stressed to score, or would you make sure to be productive scoring using NLP? Yes, well, again, this is just the same question. You should be a journalist. Maybe you can get answers out of politicians. But the answer remains the same. So first of all, it would not be me as a player, because the manager decides it. And if my role would be, okay, Joost, you have to score, then stress would help increase my chances of scoring. Whereas if my job was to support the team, then I would much more, how you say, need to relax. So in that case, that's the same answer. It just doesn't matter how you put it. It's really depends on context. And so, for instance, at Ajax, Suarez had a much more role of actually scoring, so that at Ajax much more important than Suarez scored. But at Barcelona, especially with Messi, of course, Messi could also great scorer, also great at giving assists. We'll see. We'll discuss Messi tomorrow evening. He has a type 9 mediator brain. He is the most social of all players. Of that, he has the most social brain of all players. So you can see the same kind of issue turning up with Messi, except for the fact that probably for Messi, relaxing is much better. So it's not that I said two-phase system of of having those two roles of being social and a social player, or attacking and scoring. Hi, Miguel. Good to see you. Nice that you dropped by. And so, I mean, if the intention is scoring, well, again, intention is a social, psychological construct. We don't believe in intentions. But if the task that the manager gives us, so the coach, the trainer, the manager, says to me, "Hey, Joost, you have a brain type 8. You're our center forward. We need to score." And then it would be much better to put pressure on me. And to get me stressed. That would work much better than trying to build me up and say, "Wow, you're great," and because then I would much more try to get other players to score. So hopefully that is a answer to your question. If not, just keep on going. I'm more than happy to see if I can answer it one way or the other. So let's continue with his football style. Former Liverpool captain Steven Gerrard lauded Suarez's unselfish playstyle within his autobiography, stating how that it is a rare combination to be a miraculous footballer who is willing to use his gifts to selflessly assist and create goals for his teammate. And so this is exactly what we've been discussing, that Suarez is very good at being a social player. As well, he's further writing, he scores goals, he creates goals. This is all autonomy. He is hard and horrible to play against. Again, this is also the type 8 boss, who is very tough. You've got a chance of beating anyone in the world with Suarez in your team. In addition to being a prolific player, Suarez has often been praised for his strong mentality and desire to win. Former Liverpool teammate Jordan Henderson dubbed Suarez as a warrior. That's, of course, also how we like to see type 8 bosses. We also think of them as warriors. It's very unhealthy, but their motto in life is, I need to feel pain and be exhausted in order to feel that I'm alive. It's very bad strategy, and we have very healthy alternatives to it. Nevertheless, the basic standard way of for bosses to operate is that idea that they need to suffer and be exhausted in order to feel that they are alive. And that really leads to this warrior attitude or this warrior behavior. Claiming that this attitude inspired confidence amongst teammates. Well, it's of course also the type 8 boss likes to be the leader, likes to dominate the group. Meanwhile, Gerrard eulogized his drive to succeed, stating, Luis played to win a 5-a-side training session like he was chasing the Champions League of the world or the World Cup. If his team lost a kick around, he went home angry. He always needed to win that badly. Diego Simeone hailed Suarez for the desire and energy he brought to the club. Suarez himself stated that he is the kind of player who would kill himself to prevent a throw-in at the 90th minute. Again, that is this, I need to feel pain in order to feel that I'm alive. Former Ajax coach Marco van Basten criticized Suarez for his tendency to receive yellow cards. And this is the other thing that we are going to look into. Because we'll see that type 8 bosses lack impulse control. If you look here, you can see that the disinhibition, which already means a lack of control. That is the opposite of conscientiousness. Conscientiousness is your ability to protect long-term goals against short-term impulses. Disinhibition is the opposite of it. It's scoring low on conscientiousness, which means that you're really bad at protecting your long-term goals against short-term impulses. In fact, it's the other way around. You give into short-term impulses rather than protect long-term goals. So that is the impulsiveness that type 8 bosses have. And as for football players, this is really an issue because this impulsiveness is almost always translated into aggression. And that means that they actually go over the border. It's called, I say it on purpose, not that great English, but they actually push it to the limit and actually go over the limit. That would be better English. Nevertheless, I said border on purpose because if you look at the psychopathologies, then you can see that disinhibition, if you do too much disinhibition, it leads to borderline impulsive variant. So what is the impulsive variant of borderline? These are the people who are going, everything's nice. What? You think I'm making fun of you? Or you think I'm funny? You think I'm a clown? Oh, no, I'm just joking. Oh, you really think I'm funny? And so these are the people who can just move over the border to become very aggressive. And of course, if that happens on the pitch, then they can actually go over the limit and foul a player really badly and then get a red or yellow or a red card. Hi Shayla, good to see you. How to influence the boss to make less trouble, to lower the impulsiveness. Actually, yeah, that is actually the best way to do that is really by relaxing. Of course, we have a whole video series on how to influence each type, also in English. So I'll just post the link. So here is the link. You can, if you go down the list, then all the types are listed, including the type 8, how to influence brain type 8, the boss. And that will actually discuss many strategies. Well, I know that you are going to do the course with me, so you'll learn these strategies also in the course. But the basic idea is if you want to have the less impulsiveness, then you have to help him relax, because the moment he relaxes, he moves from the 8 to the 2, and then he moves towards the, well, let's go to the healthy part. So then he moves much more closer to conscientiousness. And then when he moves to conscientiousness, then of course he is capable of protecting long-term goals against short-term interests. So that would pretty much get rid of the impulsiveness. It's pretty much a neutral or a stressed behavior. Well, Patoon, this borderline impulsive was my technique teacher at high school. Yes, well, it's a bit tough to have it as a teacher, I think, but you survived. Faker Siemens, I'm sorry I missed it. Did Ibrahimovic and Messi did not get along because Ibrahimovic was too often stressed, so he moved to autonomy and Messi stayed at agreeableness? Well, he did not stay at agreeableness, Messi. He probably, but I have to see. I did not study Messi yet. That's the topic of tomorrow. But I expect to see that Messi moved. And so for the type 9 brain players with a type 9 brain, in order to become closer to autonomy as a striker, I have to say, so strikers with a brain type 9, mediator strikers, they have two ways of moving closer to autonomy, either through stress or through relaxation. So they should stay away from the neutral zone as a striker. As they are a defender, it's a great place to be. But as a striker, they have to move away from the neutral zone. But of course, the stress for mediators leads to overthinking stuff, and overthinking stuff is quite bad for playing football. So in the case of Messi, it's very likely that he's very relaxed when he plays football, and then he moves to type 3 successful worker, which is a lookalike of type 8 boss, by the way. But that nevertheless, even though he becomes less social than in the neutral state, he still has a very social brain that gets annoyed by the aggressiveness of, in this case, Ibrahimovic, who just, I don't know whether you know much about Ibrahimovic, but he has the tendency to just kick his own teammates and really kick them really hard, just as a way to see if he can liven up the things, if he's bored. And that's just too much for a social player like Messi. So I don't think that it is Messi that he stated agreeableness. It's just that Messi has this so much more social brain than Ibrahimovic, but also like so much more social than Suarez. But Suarez was capable probably of relaxing more and playing more social, and that has of course made him very much acceptable to Messi. So hopefully I explained this sufficiently. If not, let me know, then I'll see if I can improve the answer even more. Where were we? Yes, so we did we were with the yellow cards. So the impulsiveness and the aggressiveness and the borderline impulsive variant issues, and of course Suarez has a very successful life and he is capable of achieving his goals. So that means that he has not a borderline impulsive personality disorder, because the definition of the psychopathologies with Cybernetic Big Five Theory is if they are structurally incapable of achieving their goals. And of course Suarez pretty much is capable of achieving his goals. But nevertheless, his aggression and his impulsiveness, for almost all type 8 players, you see that they score more red and yellow cards than average. And so this is a very clear indication that he has a type 8 brain. Van Basten said he had a tense relationship with Suarez. And here, of course, this is an important part because we already seen that that Marco van Basten has a brain type 5. So actually, Marco van Basten is actually the stress point of the type 8 boss. So you can see the 8 move to 5 in times of stress. And we know from all our work, what we've done for more than 20 years, 2 decades of research, we know that people who stress who move towards the stress, there's a kind of psychological dislike for those people. So it could very well be that Suarez did not like Marco van Basten, and it purely has to do with brain types. And of course, as soon as people understand this, or in this case players, or a player and a manager in the case of Suarez and Marco van Basten, as soon as they understand, oh, this is only our brain that is making this relationship tense, then they can actually overcome it, and they can become the manager becomes much better manager, and he is able to get much more out of Suarez, in this case Suarez, his player. And so to make it concrete, Marco van Basten probably liked Suarez because that's his relaxation point. But Suarez probably had a psychological dislike for Marco van Basten. And of course, Marco van Basten then noticed that. And then, of course, the whole relationship becomes tense. But it could have become easily overcome by just understanding how brain times work. So again, Marco van Basten and Suarez is another excellent example of how important it is that clubs and player agents figure out the brain types of their players. So be smart and in the same way that I'm hired by FC Twente and the likes, and player agents contact me, and we'll make sure that we figure out the brain types of your players. So let's continue. Although he conceded Lewis is unpredictable, he's hard to influence, but that makes him special. And this is another example of type 8 bosses. The unpredictability, of course, is the lack of impulse, but also the creativity, that we know that we've seen it in the other series, that autonomy is also the creativity, because autonomous people and autonomous players, they like to create their own goals and they like to create their own strategies to achieve those goals. And so they don't like to be told by the manager what to do. They much more like to be creative themselves. And that, of course, makes them unpredictable. But it also makes them hard to defend. The reason why autonomy is so much linked to attacking. But the other part is also very important, what Marco van Basten says. He is hard to influence, but that makes him special. And actually, this idea that he is hard to influence is another giveaway that he has a type 8 boss brain, because bosses are very stubborn. In the Dutch language, we have a saying where you say he has a sheet of metal in front of his head. And that is almost always the case with type 8 bosses. And here you can see that Marco van Basten is actually running into this stubbornness of the type 8 boss brain. Bosses really think that, okay, everyone has his own truth, but my truth is the real truth. At times, Suarez can be dominant, but fail to convert his effort into goals. Despite his weakness, Suarez's leadership stood out to Ajax management. Yeah, of course, here you can see that the type 8 boss is a leader and will take charge and will try to dominate the team and the staff, because they really like to dominate everyone that they are in close contact to. So if you look into his play style, you can. For me, it's obvious that Suarez has a type 8 brain. But let's get into the more problematic behaviors. Let's see which one. This was the first one. That was actually FC Twente calling me. I'm going to call them back as soon as I'm done with this stream. So that is quite funny to have FC Twente call me during the stream. Maybe they want to hire me to look into more of their players. Genes make Luis Suarez impulsive, may also make him a great footballer. I'm not going to into it, but this is quite a different neuroscientist that is going into the aggression part. I think it's much better explained by Cybernetic Big Five Theory, but this just goes to show how impulsiveness is a feature of Suarez, and that's of course also the main feature of people and players with a type 8 boss brain. So let's move to the problematic parts. So for those who don't know, Suarez was actually at one point a bit a player. He actually and I think that the biting another player is pretty much the typical impulsiveness of a player with a type 8 brain, or even a person with a type 8 brain, because he's playing is very aggressive. He is. Patoon has a question. Are there impulsiveness genes? Yes, according to the article, if I'm not sure how much you are into genes, but there is the HTR2B. So HTR2B gene is predisposes to violent crime when intoxicated than others. But again, this is not the Cybernetic Big Five Theory, and I prefer the Cybernetic Big Five Theory, although that could be that those two go hand in hand, because I'm not familiar with there is a lot of research, of course, to the genetics of dopamine and oxytocin. Those are the main neurotransmitters that the Cybernetic Big Five model works on. And it could be that these are the same. I'm just not that knowledgeable on the genetics side of it. But I do know that there is genetic research into Cybernetic Big Five Theory, or Big Five Theory, They have researched identical twins who have been raised separated from when they were babies, and then lived completely different lives. And then they did the Big Five test, and you can see that those identical twins actually also still score identical on Big Five tests, even though they have lived for 20 or 30 or 40 years, completely separated in completely different environments. So that is, I'm not sure whether they also do the genetic tests on these twins, but genetics is part of the, the evidence for the Cybernetic Big Five theory. But we're going to see if what a doctor, psychiatrist probably, thought of all of this biting by Suarez, but not before we have looked into the remark of Shaila. Shaila, it would be interesting to see for a complete football team what brain types are included in the team. Yes, it would. I am working really hard to push players or push clubs towards it. I think it will give them a competitive edge. And they can also see which player, because a club could hire a great player, for instance, Ibrahimovic. But if you see that Barcelona is pretty much a very social team, a team of friends, then you could predict that if you put Ibrahimovic in that group, that it would be a disaster. So I actually think that even in the scouting and recruiting part, it is very important to know what kind of brain types there are in the team. So let's continue. However, it remains possible that Suarez could transgress once again upon his return to professional football if he does not seek meaningful treatment for his behavior. There's, of course, psychiatrists saying you have to hire a psychiatrist. Suarez can learn to stop biting opponents, but it will not be a quick or easy process. Although biting is common in early childhood, biting in adults is rare. It may be an indication of a more serious problem with impulsiveness and anger management. Of course, impulsiveness we already discussed, but the type 8 boss is also, we already discussed a little bit when we're discussing the borderline impulsive variant, but we have not discussed it explicitly. So type 8 boss is one of the doers. The doers in the system are the perfectionist, the boss, and the mediator. We already seen with type 1 perfectionist Pep Guardiola how much he has anger issues. But also the type 8 boss also expresses has pretty much trouble dealing with anger. And here again, we have another indication that Suarez has a type 8 brain. So these are my remarks on Suarez. For all of these things that I just mentioned, I conclude that he has a type 8 boss brain. That is his profile. Are there any questions or remarks? Please let me know. If not, if everyone understands how I came to the conclusion that Luis Suarez has a type 8 brain, then we're done for tonight. There's a message. I thought that people with an antisocial personality disorder often can achieve his or her goal, and I believe that this is also a personality disorder. Well, so antisocial personality disorder, of course, is a disorder. If you look here, you can see that if you have too much extraversion, in the case of Ruud Gullit, but also that's my brain type, so I'm not blaming Ruud Gullit at all. But if you do too much extraversion, if you become too sensitive to material rewards, then you might actually act in a way that harms other people. And if you're so much into wanting material rewards and enjoying material rewards, you might not care about all the people that you harm in your behaviors. And that is the antisocial personality disorder, which is basically too much acting out too much of your extraversion. So, but it's only an ent. But so it's if you can. So, according to Cybernetic Big Five Theory, let's discuss it this way. If you are capable of achieving your goals, even if they're very selfish goals, then you don't have an antisocial personality disorder. You just score very high on extroversion. And so this is what in the literature is called the successful psychopaths. Often these are actually people with presidents and vice presidents of large international banks. They actually, the Dutch guy called Joris Luijendijk did research in the big London banks, and they saw that a lot of the presidents and vice presidents scored very high on the pathology or on psychopaths. But again, that is by definition not an antisocial personality disorder, because these are people who are very capable of achieving their goals, and for that reason they just score very high on extroversion. If you do the same behaviors but you fail to achieve your goals structurally, then it becomes an antisocial personality, an antisocial personality disorder. So it is impossible that a person with antisocial personality disorder achieves most of his or her goals most of the time. But it could very well be that that's how it looks to others, because for us it would just look like antisocial personality disorder, but in reality it would just be a very high score on extroversion. So I hope that explains it. Vegas Image, well, great to see you, and you're welcome. More than welcome, even. So, any other questions, remarks? Platoon says, thanks for the stream. Well, again, you're also very welcome. More than welcome, even. Looks like we're done for today, so let's just finish up with inviting you all. Well, you're welcome, Shayla. Let's just invite you all for tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Central European Standard Time. Then we're going to discuss the greatest footballer of all times, Messi. He has a type 9 mediator brain, and we're going to discuss how his social brain is still capable of becoming such a great striker. So thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. It was really great tonight. I loved to see that you all logged in quite early and that you came out in such numbers. That is really good and supportive for me, which makes me much more inclined to keep on streaming. So thank you very much. It's really appreciated, all the support. Allow me, good to see you, and you're also more than welcome. Hopefully I see you also tomorrow evening when we discuss the brain type of Lionel Messi. Bye.